struggling with learning something difficult right now. Maybe you're trying to write a paper and just not able to find the words or get into it. Maybe you're studying for an exam that you're just not able to grasp the concepts on. In my experience, sometimes it's a good idea to just take a step back and put your brain to work on something a bit different. And personally, the way I like to do this is through books. Welcome back to Listen to Leo. In today's video, I wanted to share the list of books that I love to use when I'm struggling, grasping something difficult, I'm having trouble getting into it. And I want to say, these books are in a variety of genres, styles, pretty much everything. And it's incredible how much they've impacted my life in various ways. So with that said, let's get into the books. Up first, it's the first book in a series. It's called Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky. And this book is something that I have recently become obsessed with. I've read all 3 books in the series now, and it has done a great job of just helping me see everything differently, especially in terms of thinking about how the human race has evolved and how evolution works, and really how communication can work between 2 vastly different intelligences. It is a science fiction book, so it's an easy read. It's got a great story that you can get into, but it has some really cool topics that I think it explores very, very well. In fact, this might be the book that I've recommended the most. I'll recommend it to random strangers online. I'll recommend it to the parents of my kids' friends. Anyone and everybody. At this point, I probably ought to set up an Amazon affiliate page for it because I love it that much and I've recommended it that much. And so I'm going to do it again, and I recommend it to you. All right, up at number 2 is a book called Timequake by Kurt Vonnegut. This is a book that I read for the first time back in high school, and it really stuck with me in a bunch of ways, but I don't think I really appreciated exactly how. And so the basic premise is that there's this timequake that sends people 10 years back into the past, and for the next 10 years, they have to live their lives exactly the way they did the first time around, which meant there were no choices to be made. Everything just happened in a predetermined way. But then when the timequake was over, the 10 years had gone by, time resumed flowing, and all of a sudden people had free will again, and they had to figure out how to deal with that. And so when I reread this during the pandemic, quite a bit older than I was the first time I read it, it hit me in a different way because I was able to see the patterns and everything that I had repeated just on autopilot. And so what happens when you actually have free will again? It's something to think about. Great way. It's an easy read again. Something that you can just pick up off to the side, but it does a great job of, really getting you to think differently through a really compelling story. So I highly recommend that. Up at number 3, it's a book called Pronoia, and this is the weird one in the group. Quite honestly, it was recommended to me by someone on Twitter. Sorry, someone on X? Yeah, this book was recommended to me by someone on X, and it's completely blowing my mind. Rebrand does make sense. But it's the idea is that pronoia is the opposite of paranoia. So if paranoia is the idea that someone is out there to get you, pronoia is the idea that someone is out there to help you. And I actually keep this book by my desk, and I don't just read through it in any particular order. One of my favorite things to do is just pick it up, flip through to a random page, and see what stands out. And so let's go ahead and give that a shot now. Again, I said I had it right by my desk. All right. I am done with great things and big plans, great institutions and big success. I am for those tiny, invisible, loving human forces that work from individual to individual, creeping through the crannies of the world like so many rootlets or like the capillaries. William James, The Will to Believe. So little things like that stand out sometimes, I think, do a great job of just throwing some random thought into your brain that helps you see things a little differently. And the nice thing about this book specifically is that you can use it to have a positive random experience in your life. A lot of times with randomness, it can be like random good or random bad, and random is random. But with this book, it's a great job of just being like positively random. I've never gotten anything out of it that has been really negative, because the whole idea is a very positive thing. And so it's a great way to just reframe your brain into a positive mindset. And who knows what you might find? You might find some really cool stuff in there. But again, just a great way to change the way you think about pretty much anything. And when you take a step back from the hard stuff and go into this positive mindset, it does a great job of really helping you do that. All right. Number 2 is a book called The Society of Mind by Marvin Minsky. And it's really just a collection of essays published by this AI researcher, Marvin Minsky, in the 1980s. And it really breaks down the idea of how our brains work, how our minds work, how we think, how we problem solve. And I've really been using it as a way to have a better understanding of how to use large language models in various contexts. But I found that it's really helpful for just producing little like bite-sized ideas. All the essays are like a page long and go into like some specific topic. And it's a great way to just spend more time thinking about how we think. Because if you actually spend time on how you think, it can change the way that you think. And something that I think not enough people really do much with. So again, it's something you can just have off to the side, pick up, read a quick essay or two, and then put down and go back to the work you were working on. And you might find that you approach things a little differently after doing it that way. All right. The last book on the list is a big one. It's Gödel Escherbach, An Eternal Golden Braid by Douglas Hofstadter. And this book has had a really weird influence on my life. So I initially picked it up in high school based on the recommendation of a really good friend. And I viewed her as someone who was just absolutely brilliant. And so when she said something like, you need to read this book, I was like, great. And I picked it up and I tried to read it, and I was like fascinated by it, but I just couldn't quite make it through. It's the type of book that if you tell someone you're reading, they're going to be like, are you some sort of genius or something? Like, who reads stuff like that? It's kind of hard to get through. But I don't recommend actually trying to understand everything in the first pass. Just read through a bit of it and try to absorb some of the ideas in it. Some very deep, fascinating concepts that, again, this is another one that I started rereading during the pandemic. I was trying to revisit old ideas, old books, and things, and try to like reset the way I was doing. And to give you an idea, I was hit by such a flash of insight that I put the book down. I found the author's email address and I sent him an email basically saying, like, I just had this great idea based off of this book. I'd love to tell you about it. And he did email me back. His response was basically, hey, I'm like really old now and I'm really focusing it on just like enjoying time with family and not really engaging with readers. But hey, glad you're enjoying it. Glad it's triggering different ways of thinking. Have a great life. Cool. Not quite the reaction I was hoping for, but hey, that's life. But I think it is a great book for just pushing yourself. And yes, it's a very dense book with some complicated ideas, but it is understandable. It just takes more effort. And ultimately, if you start reading that book for a bit and then go back to whatever it was you're working on, you'll probably find that whatever you're working on was like, wow, this is way easier. But it is a good one. I do recommend it. And it's just great for unlocking different levels of thinking. It really deals a lot with interconnected systems and being able to move between system contexts. And it's really helped me from that standpoint in understanding how different systems interact. And yeah, so it's one that I recommend you push yourself to read because it is fascinating on a number of different levels. And I think it touches on some very, very powerful ideas that, if you unlock, can really change the way you view the world and the way you work on the things that you work on. So that's it. To recap, we have Children of Time, we've got Timequake, we've got Pronoia, we've got Society of Mind, and we've got Gödel Escherbach. Take a step back, break your brain, go back to what you're working on, and I think that you'll find it's much easier to learn what you're learning. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.